Well, hello, writers. Welcome to episode number 455 of Ink in Your Veins. I'm Rachael Herron, and today I am here with the delightful Jennifer Lane. She is a person who I met here in Wellington, and she's born in Australia, and that's where her novels are set, but she is a Wellingtonian, just like me. So it was delightful to talk to her. We talk about the kindest thing she's ever done was getting some more education. We talk about the joy of writing a younger voice and what it takes to pull off writing a younger voice. So I know that you're going to enjoy this interview. Please stay tuned for that. What has been going on around here? Um, oh, it's a bit of a frustrating week. It's just a lot of stuff that needed to be done is getting done. Little bits of work that had been put off, and I feel like I've just been kind of chasing my tail all week doing the minutia, which is actually the maxutia. It's not minimum, it's maximum right now. I've got to be doing these little fiddly advertising, um, optimizing, changing things, making decisions about books. And that is frustrating. I'm not spending enough time, as much time as I want, on revising the fix, which is my focus, although I'm not really I'm not too focused on. I'm not feeling too focused. And other things have been rising in the mornings and in the afternoons. So it is Thursday as I record this on, I don't even know what month it is, 25th of July. And it's Thursday, and I just really haven't got much writing done this week. I've done a little bit in Rachel Says Right. Thank God. This is what I wanted to mention. Somebody pointed out last week, who is in Rachel Says Right, that the really cool thing, if you are doing writing on Zoom with anyone, whether it's me in Rachel Says Right, or it's the London Writers Hour, or it's Becca Syme's meeting space on Zoom, something just kind of made sense to me this week that I'd never thought about. Our brains feel like it's more safe. Our brains feel like it's safer when we are doing this with other people. It just, it blew my mind. And I can't believe that I've never thought of it, or if I've thought of it, I have forgotten about it. But even though no one's talking about their writing, we are not sharing our writing. No one can see your writing. You're just in a Zoom room and you're not looking at the Zoom. You are in the Zoom and doing your writing over here. You could be doing anything. No one is making you do your writing while you're on Zoom. You could be looking at Facebook or checking, your business email, but you're probably not, because if you show up at a writing Zoom, you write. And there's this beautiful community aspect to it that the back of our brains say, okay, there's other people here doing this. You can do this. You are safe. It is a good time to do it. And you join because you have said you'll join, and it's a calendar appointment on your calendar. I was talking to another person this week and about how handy it can be to be able to say, oh no, I can't pick you up at the airport. I'm sorry, I've got a meeting at that time. Because you do. You have a writing meeting. You can say, I have a writing meeting at that time. You can call it a class. I have a writing class at that time. People respect that. They say, oh, okay, yeah, you are expected somewhere. But more than that, we respect it. That is why I show up to Rachel Says Right and to London Writers Hour, which I go to quite often, because I put it on my calendar and something pings. I get a little alert on my phone and it says, oh, you got 5 minutes and then your thing is starting. And I get my butt over to the chair and I start writing. And I feel safe while doing it because other people are also in the water. There are no sharks here. No one's dying in the water around me. We're all bobbing around and doing our own work in our own solitary space, but we're not alone. And I just thought that was really cool that we were thinking about that and talking about that. So if you have any interest in joining Rachel Says Right, we've had a bunch of new people recently. You can join on patreon.com/Rachel, Rachael. And I think it's the $2 a month level and up. And you can get up to 16 hours or more, usually minimum 16 hours of writing with me if your times overlap with mine. And my times are always changing every week. I only fill out a week in advance to make it work around my schedule because this is really useful to me. This is why I've dropped the price so much, because I just wanted to have an appointment where I had to show up and write. And you can have that appointment too. So anyway, I thought that was cool. And now we're just going to jump into the interview because I don't really have much else to update you on. Oh, except that I'm going to be seeing Sasha Black for dinner on Sunday night here in Wellington. How cool is that? Oh, I need to make a reservation. I must do that. Let's get into the interview. Here we go. Jennifer Lane was born in New South Wales, Australia, which is where her novels are set, but she's lived in Wellington, New Zealand for more than half her life. And that's where she's joining us from today. Her first novel, All Our Secrets, won the Ngaio Marsh Award for Best First Novel in 2018. And her second, Miracle, published in 2022, was a New Zealand YA Award finalist. She recently finished her third novel, tentatively called She Loves You. Please enjoy this delightful interview with Jennifer. I know that you will. Get some of your own writing done. Come tell me about it wherever I can be found online. I would love to hear about it. And happy writing. I'm so glad you're here. Well, I am so pleased to see you again and have you on the show. Will you please share your name and your pronouns with us?
My name is Jennifer Lane and my pronouns are she, her.
Thank you. We met at Lit Crawl in Wellington. And in your email, you said it was 2022, which means it was 2 years ago already. And
I
I
know,
can't
that's scary.
quite believe that.
Yes. Yeah, I
So
know.
it was delightful to do that event with you and to be there. And I just had such a good time. And I'm so excited to talk to you about writing and in our own country here, talking
I know.
from
Very same city,
yes,
across town
a-
probably. But
across
yeah.
town. Where do you live?
I'm in Broadmeadows, which is between Kandala and Johnsonville, if you
Nice. I drive through there quite frequently. My dog's best friend lives in Johnsonville with some
Oh,
friends of ours.
okay.
So that's awesome. That's a beautiful place.
It
Good to
is. Yeah.
know. I'm over in Karori. So
Ah, okay,
on the other
cool.
side. Yay. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk about writing. What is your writing process? How and where and how do you get it done? You know, I love to hear about these things.
Well, I have an office with a desk that I really love and lots of inspirational things around me, but I rarely ever write in there because when I sit down at my desk in my office, it feels like I'm working.
Yeah.
So I prefer to write from bed, preferably early in the morning if my husband's already gone, or on the couch or anywhere. Because when I sit down on a couch, I'm relaxed, it feels like fun, and the words just flow. So that's how I prefer to write.
I love
Yeah,
that. I always had this like this background noise in my head that was like, well, you can't do that. That's too relaxed. And I've recently been dealing with some neck and shoulder issues, and I was seeing an osteo who said it's fabulous to do that kind of work in a recliner or in the
yeah,
bed or on the couch where your body is really, really supported and you're relaxed.
yeah. And it just feels like it's not work. And then you just have freedom to write whatever. So
Yes,
it
yes.
just
Especially
feels
writing in
good.
bed is just
Yeah.
decadent,
That is a
isn't
real
it?
luxury. Yeah. Yeah.
It
A
just feels
great way
like
to start the day.
the only thing I don't do, the only thing I try to prevent myself from doing now is getting in a really comfortable position to do actual work, to do like email or, stuff, because then I don't
Yeah.
ever want to taint that beautiful,
Yes,
delicious feeling of
exactly.
the bed or the
Yeah.
recliner.
Yeah. You keep them separate, work
Hmm.
sitting down at the desk
Hmm.
and the fun stuff, the creative stuff.
And are
Yeah.
you more of a plotter or a pantser as you go?
I'm trying to be more of a plotter because with my first novel, I was definitely a pantser. And so, I mean, I started with a short story, which just grew and grew and grew and grew. And I didn't know where it was going at all. So by the time I got to the end, I then had to go back and rewrite the beginning. And yeah, so, essentially you're writing 1.5 novels if you do it that way.
Oh, yeah.
So
Or two.
I try
Yeah.
to plot, and I often go off track and then have to do a little bit more planning. But yeah, so a bit of a combination.
I like that. I feel like a lot of us turn into that combo writer when we realize we're not on either side of the far end of the spectrum. Yeah.
Yeah.
What is the most exciting thing that you've ever learned about your process?
Um, well, I think it was learning that even just doing like 15 minutes a day is really valuable because it keeps my head in the story. So when I get more time to write, like on the weekend, then I can get into it straight away. And so, I mean, I've written, well, actually 3 novels, but 2 took me over 5 years each to write. but I did get them done by just doing a little bit every day. I mean, I was raising two daughters, I was working, but something is always better than nothing. So just chipping away, it
And it's
helps get it done.
astonishing how much we can get done in those 15
I
minutes.
know.
I
Yeah.
mean, doing 15 minutes once will not get anybody anything, but when we turn it into more of a delicious joy that we repeatedly do, the words just start
Yeah.
to stack up, don't they?
And it often, like I say, I'll just do 15 minutes. I've had a long day at work. I can't be bothered. And then that can easily end up being half an hour or longer. Like it's just by, going easy on yourself.
Yeah,
It,
but and you have
yeah.
to mean it. You have to mean that the 15 minutes would be okay if that's
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
if that's all
Yeah.
you can do. Are you more of a morning or a nighttime writer?
Definitely morning.
Yeah.
Yeah, first thing, preferably no one else is awake. That's when I work the best. But I have sort of learnt to do a bit in the evening, just accepting the fact that it's not going to be great, but it's something. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
And even when I feel like it's not great, I find so often that later I cannot tell the difference between what I wrote in the morning and what I
exactly.
wrote in the evening. It was just the feeling in my
Yeah,
body. Yeah.
yeah.
What part of writing do you struggle with most?
I think it's getting to the end and not knowing whether it's finished. Um, just getting really sick of looking at it. Like I feel like I could tweak things forever. And I
Yeah.
recently heard something really interesting that Alice Munro, with some of her short stories, she would keep working on them even after they were published. Like, I
Oh
don't know how
my
many she did
gosh.
this with, but there was definitely at least one story published in the New Yorker that then later came out in her own collection with a completely different ending. So I really like the idea that even someone as accomplished as Alice
Yeah.
still wasn't always completely satisfied with what she wrote. So
That I love that so much.
yeah,
I believe that she and Andre Dubus have been the most recent great North American writers ever.
yeah,
And the fact that she would still play, and she just died not too long ago,
I
just
know, I
a few
know.
months ago.
Yeah.
But the fact that she would do that, I absolutely love that. So in your bio, it says that you have recently finished that third novel. How have you figured out that you're finished then? How do you know?
Well,
Or do you not know? Which is also
that
okay.
that's a good question. Well, I did it as part of my master's.
Mm,
In creative writing. So that was my
mhm.
thesis. And so, as part of the course, it was being critiqued as we went. And I mean, it was a great way to write a novel. At the
Yeah.
end, I had an examiner's report from the university, another writer, and my supervisor. And
Mhm.
so they gave more feedback. So I used it, taking all that on board. I felt like it was
That's
close to finished.
an awesome way
And
to go. Like
I know.
the editing is built in along
Yes.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. And another thing is sort of knowing I can't bear to look at it anymore, that I have to I have to send it to someone else to look at because I just can't take it anymore. That's another
Uh,
sign.
and when did you finish that master's?
December last year.
Oh,
Yeah.
congratulations. I
Thank you.
in my master's we only had to come up with 150 pages of a novel, which I think I wrote 150 and a half, and that is still bound somewhere in the Mills Library. And I always joked, and I never got around to doing it, but I always joked that I would put like $100 bill in it, and I would go back in 20 years, and it would still be inside it.
So you didn't end up getting that one published?
No, I that was a very early attempt, and I had one of those things happen where I was just dumb and I showed it to somebody I shouldn't have, who then believed that she saw herself in the book and I hadn't even thought about her while I was writing the
Oh
book,
no.
and it just kind of devastated me and the project, and I never went back to it. So I'm always very careful to tell people, don't show things too early. Wait.
Right. Yes.
Wait.
Yes, could
Your loved
ruin
ones are going to want to
it.
read it then.
Yeah.
Don't shoot yourself in the foot. Yeah.
It's a
May I ask
lesson.
you, what are you really good at writing wise?
Well, something I find relatively easy is writing a young person's voice that feels authentic.
Mm,
I actually find it easier to write a young person's voice than an adult's voice, which probably
hmm
sounds weird, but I think it's because when I was maybe aged 12 to 14, that was probably when I read more than any other time in my life. So
Mhm.
perhaps that was a richer time as a result.
Mhm.
And I prefer that theory to the thought that I haven't actually grown up. But in my first novel, it was narrated first person by Gracie, who was 11. And my second novel was 14-year-old Miracle.
Mhm.
And these novels aren't actually young adult. They weren't written for a young adult audience, although they have been sort of marketed that way a little bit. But it's just that I find a young person's point of view really fascinating. It's that naivety and the fact that they only sort of have part of the picture from what they can get from what their parents choose to tell them or teachers and what they eavesdrop. And that makes for really exciting storytelling, especially if you're writing a mystery, which my books are both mysteries. So yeah, so that's, and that it does come quite easily when I sit down to write that sort of young voice.
I love that. What about the third book? What is the age of the protagonist there?
Well, interestingly, I thought I don't want to be pigeonholed as a
Right.
young person writer. So I stuck with one young person, but I had 4 points of view and there were three adults. So I still could have fun and be that young person.
Mm.
But it was third person, which was different from me as well. But I also got to do other voices, which I did find harder, but it was good to, yeah, see that I could do other voices just as well.
And how
So
would you encourage people who might be writing a younger voice and don't know quite how to trust themselves to do it? What advice would you give them?
well, yeah, probably. I mean, this is an an obvious one, but my memory was really key. And I mean, I conveniently set my books in the 80s, which was when I was growing up.
Mm.
So I could easily mind my memory for little details, like when
Yeah.
we're at school and we'd roll our socks down to our ankles like donuts. I don't know if that was just an Australian thing, but just little things like
I
that.
remember something about that. Yes. Yeah.
And but also I remember at that age feeling things so deeply. So I didn't have much trouble imagining Miracle's horror when her dad applied for a job as the school caretaker at the school she went to, especially knowing that the previous caretaker lost his job after having sex with a girl in the PE shed. Like you can imagine how mortified she would feel.
Yes.
So yes, memory, but also failing that, listening to your kids if you have them, or just eavesdropping and taking note of young people's mannerisms.
I was doing
Um,
that on the number two bus the other day. There were these
I,
three girls talking, and they all looked like they were about 35, but the way, they were in school clothes, so they must have been maybe more like 15 or 16, and they were talking about who was dating who and how everybody was coupled off this year. Everybody was coupled.
oh,
And then,
fascinating.
and she's with him. And then they finally said, well, it's not like they're dating, but they're a couple. I'm like, oh, that's interesting.
There's a difference.
And I'm taking notes in my head.
Yeah, yeah. And another thing I would say is be careful with the slang because that can
Yes.
date really quickly and it can also baffle readers.
Hmm.
Setting my book in the 80s gave me the advantage of knowing what words still could be recognized today, like calling someone a drip or something, words
Hmm.
that still make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also not to dumb it down because that's another misconception that a young person is less intelligent. I mean,
Hmm.
they lack life experience, and that's kind of what appeals to me, but they're still smart
There's
and
that.
yeah,
I
don't
can't.
want to
I
be
won't.
talked down.
Exactly. I won't get it right, but there's that E.B. White quote that says something like, "Oh, don't dumb down your writing for kids, otherwise you're just making it for adults."
Yeah, yeah, no, that's
Dumb
so
it down.
true.
Dumb it down for them. Yeah.
Yeah, yes.
And also, what I love about writing in that voice, because I've done it a few times, is that everything is more heightened. Because
Yes,
everything they're encountering, right, is for the first time. And they don't
exactly.
have all of that baggage of the adults around them. And I'm remembering particularly, I wrote a book that had two adults and a 16-year-old, and how alive she was to me. The 16,
Yes,
the man and the woman were like, yeah, they're just adults, but she was just so alive. I still miss that character.
yes, and even yeah, just small things can feel like the end of the world because yeah, your world is
Mhm.
quite small. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, no,
Oh,
it's
that's gorgeous. I
fun
love
to
that.
write.
What is the kindest thing you've ever done for yourself as a writer?
Well, I'm actually quite kind to myself, I must say. I'm very happy to take
Good.
myself off to retreats at least once a year and go to writing festivals and talks. But I will say the kindest thing I've done was do my master's last year.
Mm.
Um, it was the one, I don't know if you've heard of it, at Victoria University in Wellington, the
Hmm.
International Institute of Modern Letters. And I'd heard of it about 20 years ago when I first moved to Wellington. And I did apply back then and I didn't get in. It's quite
Hmm.
hard to get in. So I sort of put it to the back of my mind as something I would really like to do one day. And then, so here I am, 2 kids later. I have written novels, but really slowly. But this was the opportunity to write, just to focus on writing for, well, it was actually 9 months rather than a year, but just that intense experience. And it was just, yeah, it was a real luxury. It
I
also
love
gave me
that.
permission to read during the day, which is something I never let myself do. But a
Yeah.
course requirement was writing a reading journal. So, of course, I had to read at any time of the day so I could have something to add to my journal. So, yeah, that was a
Oh,
real treat.
that is awesome. I'm always telling myself when I'm reading during the day that it's my job, but it
Yes,
actually was your job in that moment. You did
it
have something
was.
to do with it. Oh, that is
Yes.
so, so, so good. And just allowing yourself that time to be surrounded by other writers. And now, you are an award-winning novelist and you also have that master's under your belt. I think that's
Yes.
gorgeous. Talk to me a little bit about the retreats. When you say you go to retreats, are they solo writing retreats? Are they retreats with other people? What kind of retreats are they?
Um, well, I've actually done all. There's one, I don't know if you've heard of the Kapiti Writers Retreat, which
Yes,
isn't
I've
a
I've heard
month.
great things. Yeah.
Yes, that is fantastic, where you go to set workshops and yeah, you sort of choose a theme and you stick with that. So I've been to that
Hmm.
quite a few times. I've also been on retreats with my writers group where we just rent an Airbnb for a weekend and we do
Hmm.
our own thing and sort of go out for dinner and things like that. Um, and also, as part of the master's class, there was a little house in Martinborough, a little cottage that we could rent out on our own for $20 a night. So I ended up doing that 3 times. It was absolutely amazing. And I didn't cook or anything. I'd
Yeah.
sit in the same chair. There was no Wi-Fi, no TV or anything. Sit in the same chair and just write for hours. It was incredible. So I must say, retreat on my own is actually the best thing, although I do love going away with other people and I feed off their enthusiasm for getting things done. Being on my own is really good.
For me, the being on my own is the most luxurious kind. But
Mm.
I love all of the
Yeah.
kinds of retreats. Yeah. Yeah. Will you please tell us about the best book that you've read? Oh, wait, I skipped a question. I want to know about the specific moment that you knew you had ink in your veins.
Yes, well, it was actually a long time ago because I was in year 6 at primary school and I won a creative writing competition. Um, we all had to submit a story and I mustn't have had time to write one. So I dug out an old one and on the top corner it said Jennifer Lane, age 10. So I rubbed out the 10 and I put in a 12 and I handed it in. I have stopped writing my age at the top, by the way, probably when I turned about 40. Yeah, and amazingly, it won, and I've still got my prize, which was Anne
Oh,
of
it's
Green
Anne of Green
Gables, and it's
Gables.
awarded to Jennifer Lane Book Week 1983.
I
And
love that.
it was a long time, probably 20 years or so before I wrote much else. But then when I went traveling in my 20s, I lugged a 6 kg laptop, which just served as a very expensive and heavy travel journal, really. But it was a constant reminder that this is what I want to do with my life whenever I get around to it. So it was always at the back of my mind, even though it took me a long time to
That's
actually sit
lovely.
down and
And
write.
and let's acknowledge for a moment too that you won the competition as technically a 10-year-old's
I
story, not a
know.
12-year-old's. You were that
Yes.
advanced at
Yeah,
that point. And also how lovely of the person who was choosing the award or awards that they chose Anne of Green Gables, which
I
is the
know.
story of a little girl who wants to be a writer. I
Yes,
it's
it was
it's
very
probably
well
my
done.
most pivotal core story. Did you love it as a kid?
I did love it, yes. And I'd already read it then, but
Hmm.
yes, then I could read it
Yeah.
again. And my daughters have read this same copy. And they've got the writing bug as well. So yeah,
It's hereditary or
it is.
contagious. I'm not sure which, but a
Yeah.
little a little bit of both. All
Yeah.
right. Speaking of books, what is the best book that you read recently?
Well, I did finish reading a book this week that was really, really good. And it's called We All Want Impossible Things by
Oh my
Catherine. Have you read
gosh.
that? So
Yes.
it's about, and it sounds really sad, which it is, but it's about a woman caring for her best friend who's dying from cancer. I wasn't surprised to hear that it was semi-autobiographical,
Hmm.
but it's also hilarious. And that's what I loved about it. Like, especially towards the end, like the death scene, that's not a
Hmm.
spoiler.
Yeah.
I wanted to laugh as much as I wanted to cry. And it's
Yeah.
so raw and relatable.
Yeah.
And it was a reminder of the importance of humor in both in stories, but in our lives to sort of, soften the darkness. And yeah, I just thought that was so well written.
We all
Very
want
witty
impossible
dialogue.
things. Yeah,
Yeah.
and when I finished it, I remember thinking like, I think this is a perfect book. I think
Yeah.
there's very
Yes.
few perfect books, but I think that is a perfect novel. And there's very few that I would reread because I feel like I never
Yeah.
have time to do that. But
Yeah, true.
I will
Yeah.
reread that one again someday. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm so glad you love
Yeah.
that
I
too.
love that. Yes.
So good. All right. Will you please tell us a little bit about your most recent book that is
Well,
out there
I will
and Bible Miracle? Yeah.
I'll talk about Miracle because my other one is sort of out there, hopefully being read by an agent right now.
Yay.
But yes, this is Miracle. It centers around a 14-year-old girl who's called Miracle after being born in the middle of an earthquake. She survives the quake unscathed, unlike her brother, who never stopped shaking. And the trouble starts when their dad gets a job in the local crematorium, which the community is blaming for an unnaturally high death rate. And and Miracle's being taunted by her schoolmates, and then two boys play this really cruel trick that triggers a chain of devastating events. Miracle's dad goes to jail, and her life starts falling apart. And that probably sounds quite bleak too, but there's lots of humor in it as Miracle steps up to take control. Yeah, so
That is.
that's my most recent. It was published just before I was on that panel with you in 2022.
Yes. And where can you be found
Um,
online?
I can be found at my website, which is jenniferlane.co.nz, NZ for New Zealand. I'm also on Instagram, Jennifer Lane Author, and on Facebook, Jennifer Lane Author.
Perfect. Thank you so much for being on the show. It has been
Oh,
such
thank
a
you for having me.
treat to have you and talk to you about all this stuff. And I hope that I see you again in person very soon. That
Yes,
would be lovely.
same. Yes, yes.
Thanks,
Thank you for
Jennifer.
having me.